This is the Public Works and Finance Committee of the Moscow City Council. It's our regular meeting on March 9th of 2020. To my right is Brandy Sullivan. To my left is Sandra Kelly. I'm Gina Terusio, and our first item is the approval of the February 24th, 2020 Public Works and Finance Committee minutes.
I move that we approve the February 24th minutes.
They look good to me.
Okay, same here. Those are approved. Mr. Tyler Palmer, who is our acting city supervisor.
Thank you, ladies.
Our second item is the disbursement report for February of 2020, and Renee Tack is going to come up and give us that report. Come on up.
Okay, so I'm assuming you guys have copies of this. So the total disbursements for February 2020 were $2,669,210. The largest expenditure in that was payroll of $1,106,085.
Okay.
If we look at a couple pages, or a page later, the major expenditures, we had a new VATCon that was purchased for the water department for $379,700 approximately. We had state insurance fund quarterly workers' compensation payment of $184,872. Police services facility design of about $50,570. A utility pump panel for $33,468, and a Spillman annual maintenance for Motorola was $24,162.
For those of us who aren't steeped in the three-letter or six-letter acronym world, what is a VATCon?
So that's actually, rather than water, it's for the sewer truck, and so that's the large truck that you see out there that has the hose on the front, the big vacuum tank on the back, and it's used to clean the sewer lines. And so, yeah, it's the second most expensive unit behind fire trucks that we have in the city fleet, and yeah, pretty critical piece of equipment.
Cool. Do you guys have any questions for Renee?
Only because I'm new, is all that's normal? I don't know. Just wanna-
Well, we don't normally have to get,
Yeah.
I mean,
The-
that
Yeah.
purchase, but
And that purchase was brought forward, just a note on that, that was scheduled for replacement next year. The unit that it replaced was one of 3 years that were, when the Tier 3 diesel emissions came through, there was one company, International, that tried to do a different scheme for meeting those emission standards, and it didn't work out all that well, and so those engines have been very problematic nationwide. And so that unit's been a problem for the fleet. The last year before we were able to get rid of it, it was down over 20% of the time, which is a big deal for a unit that has to be out pretty consistently. So we were able to move that forward, and the unit that was purchased ended up being $50,000 under budget. So we were pretty pleased with that.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
So good money management, and we had a $50,000 savings. That's awesome.
does the workers' compensation come out monthly?
Quarterly.
Quarterly, okay.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, then we normally sign now, so.
And if you could sign for Art.
Sure. I think I have to use your.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, it has to be the special pen.
That may not be the exact special pen. I had to
It
improvise.
looks special.
It is blue.
Thank you, Ms. Brandy. You're welcome. Okay, that being done, let us move on to the disbursement. Wait a minute, we did that already. Let's do the fourth quarter financial reports, July 1 of 2019 to September 30 of 2019 for fiscal year 2019. Please, Renee.
So this is the fiscal year-end report, the fourth quarter of the year. Revenue, you would expect everything to come in at about 100% of normal. Revenue came in at 73%, and expenses came in at 58% of budget. So both down. Most of the reduction is in capital outlay, where projects may have been budgeted for this year and put off until next year, or they were purchased for less than what was budgeted. There really isn't any other, besides capital, that's about the the gist of why it's below 58%, 50, almost 59% of budget.
And one of the things that we'll see is as we ramp up into the summer months, that's when we'll see a lot of the larger capital expenditures. So it's not uncommon for that quarter to be lower, and then the following, we'll see a spike as we get into the summer projects.
Okay. Do you have any questions? Nope. Okay, awesome. So we'll go ahead and approve that fourth quarter report.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Renee, thank you.
Thank you.
You did a good job. Our next item, and I see David Schott is on deck. I'm using spring training terms on you right there, is the Jim Lyle Rotary Park Playground Equipment Selection. David Schott from Parks and Rec.
Thank you, Councilor Terzio, with the nice introduction. Warm welcome. I appreciate that. So, this is the Jim Lyle Rotary Park Playground Equipment Selection. So the Parks and Recreation Department is requesting authorization to purchase playground equipment and the tile safety surfacing underneath that playground equipment at a total cost of $58,000 from All Place Systems for Jim Lyle Rotary Park. In addition, we're also requesting an additional $3,000 for the parks crews to install the playground equipment and rubber tile safety system. So the playground equipment is intended for children from 5 to 12 years old, and will replace the existing wooden structure at Jim Lyle Rotary Park. Just a little background, the city issued a request for proposals for playground equipment and the tiles on November 20th. We received 9 responsive proposals. After that, we opened up public voting, which began on January 15th and continued through Valentine's Day, February 14th. The public had an opportunity to vote online, attend one of 2 public forums, or they could cast a paper ballot at the HERC. We did advertise through a press release on January 14th and again on January 24th. In addition, we mailed 538 postcards to everybody within a quarter mile of the park. So property owners and residents. So Playcraft is the brand of playground equipment. All Play as the company had the largest percentage of the voting with 38% of the votes, 131 total votes. We did end up with 346 total votes, and so it was pretty clear the public really liked option, what we were calling option number 8, the Playcraft equipment. The next one was option 3 with 80 votes. So this is a picture of their presentation board. It's got swings for 5 to 12-year-olds. It's got 2 inclusive swings. It's got climbers, shroom steppers, spiral slide platforms. So kind of the process here, this project was approved in fiscal year 20 budget with the use of Hamilton funds. I did visit the Rotary Club of Moscow on their February 24th meeting. They helped through the public voting. They've had such a long history with this park that we wanted to include them in this process, and it was great to have them on board. They endorsed the All Play equipment on the 24th, and then again on the Parks and Rec Commission on February 27th, recommended the All Play Systems to provide playground equipment and tiles. So with that being the case, our staff recommendation is to move forward with All Play Systems and with Playcraft equipment in the amount of $58,000 and an additional $3,000 for materials and supplies for the parks crews to install. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions or take comments.
Go ahead.
Just a couple little questions, nothing critical at all, but when they're looking at, like you say, ages 5 to 12, do you know how they determine that? Is it by height? Is it by weight? What's their go-to on that?
That's a great question, Councilor Kelly. It goes to statistics, and so there's a break between 2 to 5-year-olds and 5 to 12-year-olds, and it's where their center of gravity is and the 95th percentile. I don't know all the technical jargon. I don't have it right in front of me, but there's a clear system for like 2 to 5-year-olds and then 5 to 12-year-olds, and it has to do with their body mechanics,
Okay.
size of their head in relationship to their body. 2 to 5-year-olds, really big head, little body. So.
And the reason I ask, it just, I go to that park a lot, but I go to a lot of the parks because I'm always interested, I don't know why, to check out the equipment. And it just seems so little and squished, and I look at kids playing on it, and they look squished, and the swings look really short, like you can't really get a good swing going, and that's not a criticism to you at all. It's just, everything looks so small, and I know that I'm big, but still, when I look at kids playing on them, they still look it looks really tight, like you can't really play. So that's why I asked that question on how they determine that.
Right. And all these playgrounds follow all the national standards, and so they have heights and widths and swings,
Good.
for example, 24 inches, 20 inches between them. Type thing.
Okay,
So,
great,
yep,
thank you.
you bet.
Do you have a question?
Just a comment, that's a lot of, it seems to me, I don't know, a lot of public comment, which is great. Is that a pretty standard for the amount of people that are giving you input and voting? Because that seems like a pretty good number.
Yes, great question. A few years ago, someone in the city, I believe it might have been Jen Piffner, had the idea of doing the online voting, and our voting results just through the roof. And so we've been getting a lot more online votes than we do the paper
Yeah.
ballot votes. And so I think that was a pretty good showing. We've had more at other parks. Lola Clyde, for example, had I think 750 votes, but for Rotary, I think this was a really good turnout.
That's just great. I mean, I think the point is to put something there that people want, and if people have voiced as clearly as this, that's what they want, makes it very easy to, I would say, go ahead and
Yeah.
approve the request.
I have a couple questions for you, though. This is the first one that I can remember in a while that you've requested an additional 3,000 for materials and installation supply. Can you tell me why, and if you looked at maybe doing 55 to take that $3,000 in?
Yeah, very good
Please.
question. We have requested in the past, I believe for Lola, we requested either 3,000 or 5,000. I don't have that right in front of me.
Okay.
I did not do that with the playground approval process. I'd forgotten, honestly, and I apologize for that. But because there's a Hamilton funds, every cent we spend, we need to get council approval. And
Right.
so I included them together as a package, and I have been doing that in the past. There was one I didn't. We came back separately just for the installation. And what that is materials and supplies. For example, not all the pieces can be surface mounted, so we got to buy Quikrete. Drill the hole. The bits are expensive. Razor blades to cut tiles. There's just, I guess, consumable costs
Yeah.
with installation.
So to ask that second half of that question, is there a way to do a $55,000 playground thing and eat that 3,000 in that cost, or is it two separate piles of money? Help me understand that.
Right.
Yeah.
Same pile of money. And so
Okay.
total project, I've got 141,000 for the entire project.
Okay.
And so I gave our playground suppliers do not exceed $60,000
Sure.
for your submittals.
Okay.
And so they all came in under that. If they didn't, they were out. So,
Okay,
and then the concrete, I'm anticipating that to be around $80,000. And so it's a numbers game. And so in the RFP, I could reduce that by 3,000, but we're going to get $3,000 less of equipment to make up for the 3,000 for the installation.
okay. I get that.
Right.
I'm just trying to ask the question about this additional 3,000. That's all I'm trying to do is verify that I know it's necessary, but you had mentioned something at the Parks and Rec Commission meeting about it being like a larger area that was going to be tiled. Was that not what you were saying then at the meeting? I thought you said that there was a bigger area that was going to need to be tiled, and so that there was extra cost involved.
I don't recall
By
that.
dreaming? Maybe I was dreaming that.
I don't recall that.
Okay.
So,
Okay, so this is pure installation, and you have asked for this before?
yes, correct.
Okay. Okay. Have you guys remember
So-
seeing this? I haven't seen this before, is why
So
I'm
now
bringing that up.
so I know that we have a certified with Calvin Macy to playground
Certified playground installer.
Right.
So is that, that's not a part of that 3,000. That 3,000 is just the materials and supplies. And so basically, we're not having to pay in addition to have someone install it because we have Calvin doing that.
Right.
So in the past, before he was certified, that would be on top of this, an additional cost to hire someone to
Right,
install it,
if
right?
somebody were to bid this out, there would be their labor costs, but in addition, there'd be, because we have supply costs with any sort of installation that we do, there'll be some, like Dave said, some disposable tools, razor blades, those sorts of things. You need things like 2x4s to brace up the posts while they're curing in the concrete, just some of those disposable things that when you're building something of this size, you end up with just some of the peripheral costs of installation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I do think it's awesome that Calvin is certified to do that, and he probably saves us way more than this $3,000 you're asking for.
Right.
That's a very good point. I just had thought I was making some connection between the extra tiling or something because it was such a bigger playground. Maybe I
Playground's
just,
58,000, and then the installation, about 3,000, and it's for the consumables.
okay.
So all the tiling for the whole area is included in that 58,000.
Yeah, the tiles, the glue, the adhesive, that's all in the 58,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. Well, what do you think?
I think Brandy moved to approve it, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay. Think we can put that on the consent,
Okay.
please?
Thank you. Have a
You're
wonderful
welcome.
afternoon.
Thank you for your diligence in answering my somewhat confusing question. Okay, that is, if I'm not mistaken, our last item on the agenda for
That
this
was it.
afternoon. Let's adjourn.
Oh, wait, I think,
Oh, Jen?
Okay,
Oh,
there
sorry.
was nothing
We do- we
listed
have-
on your,
yeah,
sorry.
apologize.
I did not mean to. Oh,
we do have a-
surprise agenda
We have
item.
a report today about,
surprise.
yeah.
Yeah. So questions have
Love
come up
surprises.
around coronavirus preparation, what the city's doing, what we're doing regionally, and thought we'd just give a brief update on what that looks like right now. We are preparing. We already have information on the website, and then a press release will be sent as soon as I'm out of this meeting and able to go do that. So just want to give an overview on what the practices are looking like for us. Chief Nickerson is our point person on all sorts of preparedness planning, so he's working with quite a few other organizations. This is our partnership and collaboration hard at work once again. We've got City of Moscow, the Moscow Volunteer Fire Department, Gritman Medical Center, Latah County, Idaho Disaster Services, University of Idaho, Moscow School District, Public Health Idaho North Central District, and then others as needed. So what we're doing at this point is we've got some things that we're doing with the community, basically working with that group, and really we look towards the state and the federal government. That'd be public health, and then of course the CDC at the federal level. They are promoting a lot of information. We're doing everything just internally as far as just updating our flyers. We had our Cover Your Cough flyers from the previous campaign. Well, Cover Your Cough is coming down and the new ones have gone up, some of those types of things. What we're also doing is with the website, and we'll do it with social media as well. We've done at least one post already, but what those resources are and how people can find them at the state and federal level. Additionally, the good illness etiquette, that's specifically coming from the state via CDC. Wash your hands, avoid spreading germs, don't touch your face is the biggest one I think right now. Some of those types of things, making sure that we're disinfecting all of our public surfaces. If we don't have traditional materials to do that, what are the other options for doing that? And making sure we have those things on hand and can do so. So that looks more at the public-facing side of it. Internally, the city developed, back in 2007 is when we started, and I think it was completed in 2009, but a pandemic flu annex to our disaster planning documents. That was specific to, at that time, it was avian flu, H1N1, and then there was an offshoot of H1N1 that came along as well. Really what that established for us was continuity of operations. How do we make sure that the essential services the city provides continues if we are infected or impacted by an infection or a threat of some sort? That pandemic flu plan response was specific at that time and flows quite nicely into where we're at now. Really what we're doing and what we look to that plan to do is update our continuity of operations for individual departments and divisions. So who's your first person in charge? If they're sick, who's next? How does that trickle down? How do we cross-train? Utilities is especially a good one for that example. How do we cross-train across those departments and divisions to ensure that those services continue on? And then we also have non-essential personnel that we look to. How can we cross-train them, and what sort of preparation or what sort of assistance could they provide in an instance where we are down personnel or resources, and how could they step in and assist others? So looking at that whole big moving piece and making sure we've got everything lined out and ready to go. Like I said, just updating those, mostly staff that's turned over with our reorganization, adjusting some things there as well. So making sure we've got that ready to go, and that's for the most part ready to go with the exception of those updates of staff, so. The simple things we've done just around the city is, again, that updating your cover your cough flyer. We've got the CDC's recommended how to avoid spreading germs and illness. And then we've got best practices for sanitation that we've shared with, or excuse me, sanitization, which we've shared with departments, especially your finance windows, your HERC windows, those types of things. One of the things we also did is the installation of the plexiglass in the finance department. The original plan that we created in 2007 said, put a plexiglass partition up there so people can still come in, do their business, but we're just giving a little bit of a barrier for that germ sharing. Let's see here, working with employees to make sure if they're sick, they stay home. We do well with that. Our sick leave policy has addressed that for, as long as I've seen that sick leave policy. So making sure people are keeping their germs to themselves. With that, any other questions you might have, and then we'll continue to monitor the situation. I know Chief Nickerson's got some meetings with the regional folks, and then Whitman County as well. We stay in touch with them as to what's going on just across the state line, so we can stay up to speed and make sure we're sharing information as best we can.
This is out on our website where the public can see it too.
Yep.
It is.
Awesome.
And one of the things that we're really trying to emphasize with people is that the city, while we certainly have a role, the role is largely at the county level, the health, the Division of Health, CDC, as far as the broad public impacts. And, but for the city, our main role largely is that we provide critical services. You've
Right.
got
Right.
water and sewer and transportation and those sorts of things that we have to look at, as Jen mentioned, making sure we have continuity of activity. And so we've got all of those groups working to make sure that, we had an example, there was a police department over on the west side of Washington that had 12 different people in quarantine at one time. And it's like, okay, what would happen? We're a relatively small operation, but we have very, very modern infrastructure. So for example, our water reclamation reuse facility, we don't have a lot of operators that know how to run that very complicated facility. And so it's important for us that we have those continuity plans so that we know, okay, if we have 3 of our main operators go down, how do we keep this thing running? And so that's what we're doing, and making sure we have contingency plans so that we can continue that operation. And that includes things even like making sure we have stockpiles of the right materials that somebody else might not know how to order, making sure that the equipment is staged in a way that if somebody had to give instructions over a telephone versus being there in person, that they could do so. So there are a lot of considerations that just go into making sure we have that continuity of critical services.
Yeah. And these plans we update regularly and look to improve. Our standard operating procedures have come light years from when we did this original plan back in 2007. So you can pick that list up and know how to work. It's on some of the baser levels more simple, but in those instances where you can just follow the steps and make it happen. So
Excellent.
What's a standard operating procedure for deciding when to stop classes out at the HERC or at the Egan Youth Center? Is there a set number there?
Right, so we look to one of the regional planning group. University of Idaho has a considerable amount of events. What are they doing? What are we hearing from the state and from the federal level? Really, that'll come from any number of things could trigger it, but the county would be the one to initiate the emergency declaration type issue. So we look at all of those things. We look at cases, how they're proceeding, just what that looks like overall, and how we need to be proactive in making sure we're making those decisions in a timely fashion.
And and of course I hope this doesn't happen, but let's say all of a sudden we do get a wave of this and we do end up canceling classes. I'm sure there's a contingency plan to either refund or reschedule for those that have already paid for their 6 classes.
Yeah,
and
we
that's
would
all
work
set?
through all of those details, yeah. I mean, we have classes that cancel outside of
Sure.
emergency instances,
Sure.
so a lot of those processes still apply.
Right.
They
Just at a
are
bigger
just
level.
applied in a
Okay.
different scenario.
Excellent.
So from what you were saying, the plan was, the process for the contingency planning to make sure the city services still run was kind of established initially in 2007, and at this point, it just needs a few changes for actual names.
It was
Mostly names.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
finalized in '07. We've had our staff over the last several days going through and updating those, just to see if there are things that need to be updated. And there's some tweaks to names, and there are a few different changes just because of facility changes. But we had a good template to go off of, and so now it's just a matter of refining those preparations.
Yeah. And one of the things that we're looking at is in the future, just use titles. That might be more
Yeah,
helpful.
yeah.
Yeah, so simplifying and making sure it's just ready to go.
And if the county ever needed some kind of assistance from the city as far as, I don't know, building space, people needed to be quarantined or something, that's just something they would come to the city and
Happy to
then
work
you-
with all of our
Yeah.
partners on
Yeah,
those
and
types
at
of
that
things.
point, there's likely to be a disaster declaration from the governor's office, and then that really frees up some intergovernmental support in a large way. Within the utilities and those critical operations, one of the strategies is to cooperate with neighboring utilities. So for example, we're in contact with Pullman and Lewiston and some of those others that have operators that are certified to run the types of systems we run. So if one of us gets hit harder than another, we can kind of help each other out and support between the agencies.
And where would someone find that? Because I was asked about,
I don't believe it's posted on the website. That's one of the things that I'm looking to do once we get the initial information up, but just having some of those resources and not just our plan, but how do we, linking to CDC and the North Idaho District and those types of things. So we'll build that out in the coming days.
okay,
Awesome.
thanks for working on the press release.
Oh, yeah, you bet. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.